Okay, I'd like to call to order Town of Shelburne Development Review Board meeting for Wednesday, January 15th. And I'd like to make sure that everybody that's here from public signs in. And before we start, I'd like to open up the floor for any public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Okay. Hearing none, the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes, but we will continue or defer that to the next meeting because we don't have, I guess, enough people here, quorum or whatever, that could approve that. So we will skip that. Okay. And then item number 4, next item is related to conflicts of interest. Are there any items on the agenda tonight that any board member has issues with that they want to disclose? Okay.
Nope.
Hearing none from the board. Any members of the public have any concerns with any members of the board regarding items on the agenda? Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, maybe just to point out for the audience and anybody watching that at least one of your members is not here because he would have recused himself and
That is
would
correct.
have no
On all
no
the
work to
items,
do.
so no work to do, so
he's at home.
He's at home, yes. Okay, then we will move on to the first item. Application DR 19-24, application by St. Catherine of Siena Parish for design review to amend previously approved windows for the Parish Hall addition. Property at 92 Church Street is located in the Village Center District, Village Design Review Overlay District, Village Core Overlay District, and Stormwater Overlay District. Dean, would you like to elaborate? Okay. Is there, are you here for that?
Yes.
Okay. Dean, would you like to comment first?
I can tee things up, Mr. Chairman, yes, be happy to do that, and thank you. I'll be providing limited testimony. Are you going to swear folks in? Did you?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
When they are ready to testify, or,
Okay. If it's your practice not to swear in staff, that's fine. My testimony would be, or my comments would be largely based on the staff report that was prepared by Revy before he left, and also my attendance at the HBDRC meeting, as noted in the staff report that was included in your packet, the brief staff report. This is an application to modify an earlier approval that had been granted to St. Catherine of Siena Parish for the work over there. You've received in your packets the application, the narrative, the cut sheets from the catalog, and some drawings that were prepared by the new architect. The essence of the application is that there's a revision to the design of the windows in the new portion, or the new building. Instead of 1/1, depending on the location, it'll either be 6/1 or 4/1, and it's something that's best conveyed by looking at the drawings, and Anne may jump in. The HBDRC had its meeting back on December 19th, and after brief discussion, voted to recommend approval. And in a very cursory review underneath the design guidelines, we also find no conflicts with the design guidelines.
I am Ann Cousins, representing St. Catherine's Parish.
could step up to the microphone, and I have to read my script here to swear you in. Do you hereby swear and affirm that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Okay. Take it away.
I'm Ann Cousins. I'm representing St. Catherine's Parish. We're building an addition to our historic church. In the addition, we originally had planned on having 1/1 sash. This is a little bit of a design by committee. And at our parish town meeting, we received significant feedback that the windows really didn't have the stature of the church or the addition. And we instead brought an amendment to have 6/1 and 4/1 windows, depending on the size, which is more in keeping with the style of addition, shingle style.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
No.
Any questions from the public? Okay, hearing none, is there a member that would like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that, a motion is made to grant design review approval to St. Catherine of Siena Parish to amend the previously approved windows for the parish hall addition as submitted.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you,
Very
Ken.
good, thank you. Okay, next item, application sub 1505R6, application by Civil Engineering Associates, Inc., on behalf of Rice Lumber Company LLC for final plan amendment to relocate a residential driveway property at 4188 Shelburne Road, is located in the mixed-use district and stormwater overlay district.
I see no one here. I haven't.
Dave-
Oh, there's
Dave's
David.
here, yes.
Okay, he did.
Yes. So, whew, darn. Should have been a little.
I think we should put them at the end.
Yeah,
This is almost the end.
I know.
yeah, this is the end, so, okay, Dean, any comments?
Again, thank you. And again, presenting limited comments based almost entirely on Ravi's staff report and review of the recent application materials. This is an amendment to a planned unit development, has been warned as such. The portions of the materials that you've received that I would highlight really come down to what you could call a counterpoint between the fire department and the applicant's engineer, Dave Marshall, having to do with the road. The focus of this, or the entirety of this application, is a revision to a portion of the road that serves the 4 residential lots that are behind the commercial lots on the property that's known as the Rice Lumber or Carroll property. There are comments from the fire department as mentioned. There were some limited comments from the folks who review stormwater issues, but nothing substantive there. There are places in the application that make it explicit there are no proposed changes to conditions, and really the essence of this application is a revision to a portion of the roadway, and I believe some minor associated landscaping changes as a result of the road change or something like that. And there are some recommendations included in the staff report. If you want to jump to those, they're limited to recording of Mylar and getting a permit. My only additional suggestion beyond what Revi had supplied you with would be a stock condition to the effect that any conditions included with previous approvals that are not affected by this
Right.
would remain in full effect.
Okay. Dave?
Very good. Dave Marshall from Civil Engineering Associates.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
Very good. We'll
Nonetheless,
We'll swear you in. Yeah. Do you hereby swear or affirm that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Okay.
Very good. This is a request before the Development Review Board that has been heard before. I think the only people associated with that previous review, as I look across the table, is Ms. Bentley and Mr. Major were here previously. Because of a faux pas in the filing of the Mylar in a timely manner, we get to come back to see you again. But in this particular case, we have a broader group of people who have not heard this application, so if you bear with me, I'll describe again a little bit what this one's about. Dean, do you have any plans available that we can put up on screen?
So now I understand. I was here and I was like, when I was reading this, I was like, haven't I read this before?
I had the same feeling.
Yeah.
So those are the 4 sheets that if you wanted to zoom in.
That may be good, and we may zoom in on the next one. But this is a good overview. So to orient you, north is to the right on this plan, and this is Route 7. This is the existing driveway into the Rice Lumber campus, we'll call it. This is the the main warehouse building, this is the heated portion, this is the cold area storage, and then this is what we call the retail store. And associated with not only the developments of lots 1 and 2, there was also some commercial lots along Route 7, but also 4 single-family homes located in an upper elevation portion of the property. And under the original approval, this particular driveway came out and went through a portion of the commercial area. And in this particular case, what that meant is that when the gate went up, there were some logistics of how to get people in and out of their residential homes during a time when the commercial business really wanted it to be gated off. Not that it couldn't be overcome, but nonetheless, one thing that came out over time was, well, why couldn't we come off of this particular area of the existing common drive, reestablish the gate at this particular location to secure the commercial operations and allow for unfettered access to the 4 single-family homes along this particular portion of the project. So it seemed to make sense. So we came before the board and made that presentation, come back before you again today. And in this particular case, there were comments provided by the fire department. And the things that ultimately were responded to, and there was, their original comments were from April. We provided comments shortly thereafter and haven't heard anything since. But nonetheless, we had invited them to the last hearing and again to this time to provide any supplemental information. But generally, they wanted to basically figure out how to basically make this flatter than what was proposed. As it turns out, we were actually able to flatten what otherwise had been a steeper section here with this particular proposal. So in the end, we had a section of driveway that had flatter portions, marginal, but nonetheless still flatter than what had been approved originally. And also, part of the application was to augment each one of the entrances into the proposed homes to basically facilitate improved operations. I think another component of the request was to basically significantly widen the driveway or the common drive into the area, and we had responded that we were following NFPA 1, that's the National Fire Protection Association's kind of Bible. You know, it's this thick, but it basically covers a lot of fire protection response design standards. Within the 37 sections, Section 20 deals with site-related improvements, and basically we cited line for line what their recommendations were as far as widths of roadways for this particular type of situation. So that's what you have in your package, is that particular piece of information, and I won't predispose your thoughts, but we did have a positive determination from the last time we presented this information. Other things that, maybe I'll just leave it at that, as far as at least the initial presentation, and it open up to the board to questions.
I know we've had several meetings, but did something change, or are these 4 single lots still being looked at for the 4 12-unit buildings?
Good question, because you have had a sketch plan come before you for converting these 4 lots into those multifamily. So at this point, you say, gee, Dave, why are you here to basically deal with something that ultimately is going to change? Well, at this point, the family wants to make sure that if that project doesn't become successfully approved, that we have perfected at least the single-family home component. So if we revert back to single-family homes, at least we do have a viable access in there. But you will likely see future testimony about the proposal to change those 4 single-family lots into something larger in density. So at the risk of using your time for 2 different things on the same piece of property, yes, that's why we're here before you.
So if it goes to something else, do you come back again?
I'm sorry.
So if we say yes to this,
Yes.
we're saying yes to this with 4 lots. I'm trying to understand the relationship to
Sure.
approval tonight with 4 lots versus when it comes back again and we've approved the road, but then it's 12 lots. How does that go?
So, go ahead, Lee.
There's no requested use change that's included as part of this application, and
So all we're doing is approving the road,
This is-
regardless of what goes on around it.
correct. This application is not proposing, and in fact, it recognizes those 4 lots as single-family lots. And so from our perspective of staff, any change in that is going to require the approval of the board. I'll go on to say that this is a complicated situation. It's an amendment to a PUD at the same time that we know that there are, depending on how you count, 2 or 3 other pending proposals to amend.
Right.
So I'll forewarn everyone that it will be a staff recommendation that the approvals that are granted will interlock. We have as staff encouraged the parties to come in with a single proposal so that the DRB does not get pecked to death by ducks. They're not able or excited about doing that. So the way to affect that is to make sure that the approvals that are granted tie the others together, so that you won't really be able to run with your approval unless or until the other approvals are given. But that's going to be up to the board. That is going to be the recommendation of staff as an alternative to forcing somehow all of the applications to come in at once.
So another thing to bring all of the board members up to date, there are 3 other requests that have gone through sketch plan. That ultimately, some of them are located out on the far east, north end of the site here. But there's also proposed boundary line adjustments in this location, coupled with obviously the proposal for the multifamily. And this one, we feel is more, I hate to say it, but staff will say, Dave, there's no previous approval recognized, but nonetheless, it's more housekeeping that we feel that this one, because we're kind of at final now, will basically finalize the record, provided we get the Mylar back, it's filed in a timely manner. But then these other ones will basically overlap over this previous approval. And if this particular driveway needs to be further revised to support the access into the multifamily, then it basically will superimpose itself on top of this approval. And if they don't go forward or aren't successful, then at least this one will be in place. So just like almost every project that is kind of, well, what's the word I'm looking for? It's basically, yeah, strike that thought, so.
So let me see if I understand what you're saying.
I'm
If we
sorry.
approve if we say yes to the driveway, and it becomes a 12 thing, or whatever is gonna happen, and you have to change the driveway again, then you'll be back.
Well, you'd
Well-
be back anyway.
They will, so,
No, on
for
the
example,
driveway.
it's a separate engineer that's working on the multifamily project. When they come forward with an application before you, to basically seek the current status of approvals for this particular property, that approval, provided that it's approved, or the application is approved, will trump anything else that's been approved previously. To Dean's point, though, that any previous approvals and conditions that go along with the property in the PUD still carry forward. But in this particular case, there's the potential that there will be tweaks to that access, depending on fire department comments and the like, because of the change in character of what's being proposed in that location. So those are things that do happen on many projects, where you get one approval and then somebody says, gee, I have a better idea, let's do something else. And if it meets the rules, then they get an approval, and basically that updates all the previous approvals underlying it. So I think that's the best I can do as far as trying to explain the situation. And at this point in time, this is kind of just to protect the family's interest again, if nothing else is successful up top.
If I may. Aside from the fact that I have no qualms agreeing with David, this is essentially a housekeeping approval
I knew I'd get beat up on that.
since this is a second go-round.
Yeah.
Maybe another way to look at it, Ann, is that the approval that was granted to the PUD is the entire property. And so even if they're changing a part of it with a request to modify those 4 lots, you as a board are looking at the entirety. And so you'd say, hey, you're gonna build those, you need to upgrade your road, and as a condition of approval, you've gotta change it, and they all understand that, or they need to understand that.
Right.
That's fair.
Is it, if I may, is it safe then to assume that the 9.6% slope is for an area that's less than 300 feet?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Dan, I'm curious, is this a public road or accepted by the town, or is it a private road?
No, these are all private roads.
All private roads.
Yeah.
So I was just, next curious question, I think we might have touched on this before, is so, the comment here talks about the town public's work specifications. Is that applicable to a private road? Just curious.
The public work specifications are geared principally towards facilities that will become public. So the public work specifications by themselves are not really the right yardstick. But the public work specifications aren't the only yardstick that members of staff or the board could potentially apply. You could look at the subdivision regulations and other criteria and say, if the fire department is saying it's too steep, then that's not providing adequate access to these lots. So long as it is reaching a definition of street, which I'll read you the definition, but essentially boils down to some somewhat regular use by the public, then my position is that there is the ability to apply those kinds of restrictions. If we were talking about 4 single-family homes and the application said, we're going to put a big sign that says private, do not enter, it could be very difficult to reach the place where you say, this is a place where the public is going to assume that they can regularly travel, so it's probably or may not be a street. On the other hand, 4 buildings each with 12 units in it or something like that is going to, I believe, easily meet the definition of regular use by the public, and therefore you would have that ability to apply restrictions.
Got it. Okay,
Gotcha.
question, Gail?
I'm Gail Albert, and I'm on the Natural Resources Committee, and was on the committee when this initial project was.
Okay, and gotta
was
swear you in.
approved. Oh, yeah.
Do you hereby swear or affirm that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do. Yeah. So I was on the Natural Resources Committee when this project was initially approved, and there was a great deal of concern because of the area where the 4 homes are permitted. There's a lot of evidence that I'm sure there's still a record of, and I was flipping through this to try to find the record of a lot of rare species and endangered species on the Vermont level that are in that area where the 4 houses have been improved. So at this point, I'm just concerned about a couple of things. Number one, in changing the aspect of this road, are you going through any of the woods up there, and what would the impact be on the species that are there? And then secondly, if that, and I guess this refers back to Ann's question, is the road that steep going to be suitable for any larger group of houses if there are thoughts of having many, much more traffic right there?
Would you like me to respond? Yes. So my understanding, well, it is my understanding that many of the most significant, come on, you can work, there we go, natural resources are located up in this particular northwest corner of the property. A bunch of natural communities that have been identified by the state, and we went out with Bob Pop to physically identify all those features, and as part of the original applications before the board, as well as Act 250, had identified the buffering requirements to those particular areas, as well as what the cutting restrictions were for the single-family homes themselves. There was also discussion as far as Bobcat And the ledges that are on the backside here, and again, how to basically maintain buffering from that particular area to the proposed home. So those were all integral, and this application doesn't propose to change any of that. In this particular area, this is an area that's been subject to a lot of rock manipulation.
I know.
Yes. So there'll be some more to do that, to basically facilitate this particular alignment. There'll be some blasting that's required in this particular area, but nonetheless, as well as a modification of the retaining wall that's currently out there today. But again, in regards to the other areas which are very natural and very significant, there's no proposal to modify that area.
And so none of that road is going to traverse?
I didn't answer that question, did I?
No.
But Mr. Blay asked the question, which is actually a standard right out of the Public Works specifications, where it actually indicates that the preferred slope for a public road is 8%, in recognition that not everywhere is flat or flattish, that it does provide an exception up to 10% for portions of the road for up to 300 feet, not exceeding 8%. So you can have a section of road that's less than 300 feet long, that's somewhere between 8 and 10%. And my understanding in dealing with other fire departments is that it's an issue of, again, just the horsepower of their equipment and the ability to basically move up hills to make sure that they can respond in a timely manner. So in this particular case, this is a much shorter section than that. If we wanted to try to apply the public works standards as a tool to at least understand what can be implied as being issues that the fire department has had, or perhaps what was specifically worked into the public works specifications as part of that. You know, it's a publicly notified and commented on document, like when it was originally accepted and adopted, I should say. And in this particular case, this short section of road easily falls within those particular standards.
You missed one part of the question, which is, does this traverse any of the areas that need to be protected?
Oh, the answer is no.
Okay.
Or no
Short
trees.
answer.
Right. Sorry.
Well, it was not
Cutting
just-
to the chase. I'm sorry, I missed all that.
It was not just trees that were the concern, or bobcats, but there were also some rare ferns and other rare plants there, and endangered plants within the area. And so I just want to be sure that there's no...
Yeah, and you know, again, I'll keep highlighting this area here. That's where those natural communities are, but there wasn't anything identified in this area as far as those particular resources. Otherwise, we wouldn't have seen any of those particular type of improvements in that area as part of both local approval nor the Act 250. So again, you can see that this area is very scant, and that was specifically because of the natural resource populations that are occupy that portion of the property.
Thanks, Dave.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, do we have any board members that would like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to finalize the record and close the hearing. And motion to indicate approval, I would like to direct the staff to prepare a decision indicating approval of final plan amendment of application SUB 15-5R6 by Civil Engineering Associates on behalf of Rice Lumber Company to relocate the residential driveway subject to the following conditions. The Mylar must be recorded within 180 days.
Hear that, Dave?
Yep. And a zoning permit is required prior to any land development pursuant to Town Bylaws 2010.1. And there is nothing left on the list.
Actually, could I move to amend that we include the suggestion from the staff that any conditions in previous approved recommendations would remain in full force and effect?
Excellent.
Absolutely. Okay. Anybody
I'll
second
second.
that? Seconded by Ann. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time again.
Good to see you.
See you next time.
180 days.
So
include that.
We may not see you again for this. And be other permit, oh, you'll be doing some of the other pieces, right?
Yeah, we get to come see you about these are lots 4, 5, right now there's boundary line.
Adjustment, right.
As well as subdivision, re-subdivision of those lots, and then this is the healthy living and the fire department.
Okay.
Subdivision and site plan.
Okay,
So those will be coming to you in the near future.
David's not going anywhere.
yeah, okay.
There's no plan at the present time for changing those 4 residential lots to the larger buildings?
I can't speak to any detail other than the fact that I understand there is something that's both been presented to the board as well as still in the works to work out the details. But I don't know anything about it because we're not the
That's
design
right.
engineer.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks,
yeah,
Dave.
I believe you and I can talk offline about things coming into the office.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, the next item, Dean, do we have to?
You should, someone should make a motion to
Continue
continue
it.
this public hearing until February 19th at 2020 at the request of the applicants.
I'll make a motion that we postpone application BLA 20-01 to February 19th as a request from the applicant.
Okay. Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8, any other business to discuss?
Just a few things concerning the schedule. The next meetings would be February 5th is what we're warning currently for, February 19th, March 4, March 18. I would say that the possibility, distinct possibility exists that applications could be warned that may not be ready for discussion, and by that I mean we're going to have to may have to meter material that comes to you because of lack of staff. Revy's replacement has not been hired. We haven't even begun the interview process yet. So those are the dates, but the hearings that will be held could be spread out a bit more because of manpower, person power. I did want to just give a couple of informational items since you had a HBDRC, a design review application that was pretty minor in scope. Some of you may be aware that there's been some discussion about changing the regulations so that minor design review applications would not need to come to this body for a kind of rubber stamp. That is part of a larger package of changes that the select board will have a hearing on in February. So that could reduce the number of small applications that you see. So if you really want to see them, you could appear at that hearing and argue against that amendment, but if you're happy with that idea. Another informational item, since this is the body that does 99 and 44/100% of the quasi-judicial review, I will let you know that there is an ordinance in town that actually says the planning commission does the kinds of things that you do in rare occasions, and it's called the telecommunications ordinance. And the planning commission has just received an application for a ham radio tower that is larger than the no permit required. So the planning commission will be getting into your realm a little bit, just where the world gets easier for you, it could get harder again. I think it's foreseeable that that regulation could possibly be changed in the future so that that responsibility comes back to this body, because in the past it was. So yes, you win some, you lose some. But we get very few telecom applications to begin with, and it used to be that all of those came to the zoning board or then later the DRB. And then when the regs were amended a few years ago, it changed specifically to the planning commission. They'll be doing this one, but it's possible that that would come back to you. And then, yeah, I mentioned staffing, and then there are some decisions to sign, so I can send those down the table.
Is that on the schedule for the next
planning?
So the schedule is, that hearing would be warned for their first meeting in February. So the planning commission has one more meeting this month, a week from tomorrow. They'll be getting a presentation from the town attorney on this because it involves some limited federal preemption, and Shelburne knows to do that. Sorry?
Where is it going?
The property is located off of Dorset Street, near the intersection of Dorset and Barstow, that vicinity.
Getting awful close to my house.
It's a little further north.
Further north, okay, good.
Dean, were, Ravi said that there would get support or help from another town? Well, yeah, there was
Regional
some,
planning?
yes.
So the Regional Planning Commission has in the past had people on staff who could work on an hourly basis. When we approached them, as soon as we learned that Revi was leaving, we made that inquiry. They didn't have people on staff at that time. They've added, or they're in the process of adding staff. So if the Shelburne process takes longer, then it's possible they'll have someone who
Oh,
could fill in.
Okay.
That would be my hope.
I was just gonna say, we could go to monthly if it would be easier.
Well,
It's
that
not like
idea
the
has also
load.
occurred. Applicants are not fans of that, but it's something that if the Regional Planning Commission was to say something like, there's no prospect of getting someone for the next 3 months, and if our process gave us a similar view, then that could be a recommendation.
I mean, it's gonna work out that way,
One way or the other.
except we'll have 2 meetings a month instead of 1, but,
It'll end up being like one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there that much in the queue?
Things are
Seems quiet.
starting to get a little bit busier. Some of them are very small. We have a couple of minor subdivisions or boundary line adjustments, but some of them are, not so insignificant.
Okay.
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 So as I mentioned, decisions.
Okay, so then
Make
I
a motion
guess,
that we adjourn?
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.